While Abyssal Armor spikes are straight up upgrade over normal armor spikes, they are not really worth using by themselves, and in this video I'll try to explain why, so whenever you're ready grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax and enjoy. If you enjoy all kinds of content related to RuneScape, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon down below. Moving on. In the current game, we have 4 different types of armor spikes. We have regular rune armor spikes, also known as armor spikes, which deal damage based on your smithing level up to a maximum of 99 damage at level 99 smithing. Alloy armor spikes work the same, except they have a 10% chance to deal up to 990 damage, meaning you'll deal around 188.1 damage on average per armor spike. The other 2 armor spikes in the game are the abyssal versions of both the regular and alloy armor spikes. Both are upgraded using Abyssal Flesh, which will give you 10 armor spikes per bit of Abyssal Flesh. The Abyssal Armor spikes have a 25% chance to activate the Abyssal Parasite Bleed on a successful incoming hit from an enemy target. This bleed will deal 5 hits of melee damage and can be refreshed with every single stack and stacked up to a total of 50 stacks, increasing bleed damage massively. Now when your target dies, 50% of their current stacks are spread to enemies within a 5x5 area. This does not, however, aggro the targets in this area of effect. Abyssal Alloy Armor spikes will deal anywhere from 219 damage at 1 stack all the way up to 1719 damage per spike at 50 stacks. Now this might seem like it's amazing, but it's quite difficult to get 50 stacks in practice only using Abyssal Armor spikes. Now to really understand their worth, we're going to have to take a look at the time and cost to create these Abyssal Armor spikes. Creating 1000 regular armor spikes using an Elder Rune bar will take you around 60 seconds. If you want to upgrade these to the alloy version, it will take you an additional 15 seconds, and a concentrated alloy bar. Currently, creating Abyssal Armor spikes takes a very long time, and to create 1000 of them, you're going to need to use 2 minutes of your own time. If you have enough armor spikes in your inventory to upgrade, you can make up to 29,000 of these per hour. If you have to make Abyssal Alloy Armor spikes from scratch, expect to only make around 18,000 of these per hour. It's worth pointing out that making Abyssal Armor spikes, whether rune or alloy, is very expensive compared to simply having alloy armor spike. To give you an idea of how expensive these Abyssal Armor spikes are, the rune ones are 42.66 times more expensive than their regular rune counterpart. The Abyssal Alloy ones are around 9.5 times more expensive than regular alloy armor spikes. So the cost to make these, and that's not even including the time to make them, is enormous compared to the regular version. It gets even worse when you add the invisible cost of time to this as well. Since you can only upgrade 1000 of these every 2 minutes, you're going to need to add around 250 GP per armor spike if you're making 7.5 million GP per hour. This would make the Abyssal Alloy Armor spikes 13.4 times more expensive than the regular alloy counterpart. It's worth pointing out that you use anywhere from 900 to 3,500 spikes per hour, depending on if you're fighting a single target or multiple targets are attacking you at once. Now you might be wondering, why does all of this matter? Well, it's a problem because the Abyssal Parasite Special only has a 25% chance of activating on every successful hit. When fighting a single target creature or boss, there simply isn't a high enough chance to maintain stacks even if said creature has 100% accuracy on you. In this clip, a Ripper Demon with an attack speed of 1.8 seconds, so one of the fastest attack speeds in the game, is constantly attacking me and still losing its stacks eventually because of that 25% chance, or because the Ripper Demon decided to jump me. This is incredibly important, as this does mean that if you're fighting a single target, you're not going to get that much more out of these armor spikes compared to alloy ones, despite them costing over 10 times as much. The only time this doesn't matter is if you're using a Jaws of the Abyss helmet in combination with these armor spikes when bossing, as the occasional proc will allow you to gain more adrenaline from your basic abilities. I would suggest against using Abyssal Armor spikes against bosses and single target Slayer creatures if you aren't planning to use the Jaws of the Abyss for extra adrenaline, as the extra damage gained from these armor spikes is absolutely not worth the time you need to put in to create these. use. Now, it's also worth pointing out that the regular alloy armor spikes are still better than the Rune Abyssal ones at 3 stacks. Basically, it's not worth creating the regular Rune Abyssal armor spikes at all, as they're too expensive, and alloy ones only take a little bit more money and time and are just far better. So what about Slayer, or places where you have a ton of clustered up mobs attacking you? Well, there's a couple of requirements which make them not so effective even for Slayer. Now sure, I noticed an increase in kills per hour at some tasks where I could actually get a decent amount of stacks, but these tasks required a few things. For Abyssal Armor spikes to work very effectively, you would need to have clustered up monster spawns, preferably more than 5, monsters with high health so they can gain a lot of stacks while attacking you without dying too quickly, and they need to respawn quickly in a small area. Finally, you're going to need to wear a melee weapon, legs and body for these armor spikes to actually work, either when equipped or in your inventory, because both work. The problem with Slayer, and pretty much the majority of places in the game, is that you're not going to be able to tick off all of those boxes. For example, dinosaurs have high health and they respawn relatively quickly, but they aren't clustered up, they're quite large, and there's not 5 spawns that constantly attack you. Errats are a better example of where these work relatively well, but still probably aren't worth using, as eventually you're going to lose your stacks, as Errats are very far spread out. They do have a fast respawn and a decent amount of health though. Like, these do work here, but I still don't think they're worth the amount of money and time you're putting into actually creating these Abyssal Armor spikes. This is also why I explained how much they cost and how long it takes to make them, as it is very important. Let's say we have a Corrupted Scorpion task, and this is completely theoretical apart from the amount of spikes used, and it normally takes us 15 minutes to complete this task. Let's say our task is sped up by 10%, that means we saved 1.5 minutes and now complete the task in only 13.5 minutes. Now, since you use about 2.3 thousand Abyssal Armor spikes per hour Corrupted Scorpions, this means we use 517.5 spikes, or around 100 seconds worth of creating these spikes, if we would have actually created them from scratch, meaning creating rune, then alloy, then turn them into abyssal alloy. In reality, this means we would have done our task slower than actually not using any armor spikes at all. Or if we only take the amount of time to upgrade these abyssal armor spikes into account, we would have only done our task about 3.2% faster than without those abyssal armor spikes. Oh, and it also cost us 317,000 GP. Now in reality, the amount of kills per hour increase was only a few percent at the majority of tasks I tried. And at some tasks, for example Corrupted Scorpions again, Magic with Insight Fee and Corrupting 4 and Greater Chain and all that stuff, still beat out melee with abyssal armor spikes in terms of kills per hour. The same goes for venomous dinosaurs. Now this all may seem confusing, but basically what I mean by all of this is abyssal armor spikes, the alloy ones, because rune ones are just not worth it anyway, are only better in terms of time invested if the time you gain from using them is higher than the amount of spikes you use times the amount of time to make those. And while I did notice a good amount of kills per hour at places where enemies were clustered up, for example Abyssal Savages, Abyssal Beasts, and of course Abyssal Demons, where I was able to get near chinning rates at 1610 kills per hour using Abyssal Alloy Armor Spikes and my Scythe, which is really good, but I'm paying a bunch of money. I was using 3.2 thousand spikes per hour there, which is like 1.9 mil. And while these spikes work very well at Abyssal Demons, they are not really going to be making you much profit or be worth your time, because Abyssal Demons are maybe like, what is it, 4 to 6 mil GP per hour? And you're spending 2 mil to bump that up maybe like 20% with melee, and you can still beat it out with ranged? Why would you? It just doesn't make sense. The only reason you'd want to be using Abyssal Armor Spikes is if you're using the Jaws of the Abyss helmet to gain extra adrenaline every time they do proc, which is mainly useful for bossing. In fact, you'd probably be better off simply using a Scourge switch, getting a few stacks on a creature instead of using Abyssal Armor Spikes, without it costing you any extra time to create the armor spike. When using the Abyssal Scourge for Slayer and using the Greater Flurry or just Flurry ability, you add a lot of stacks to enemies around you, which is actually quite effective. But with that being said, we've come to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it interesting. If you did, leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.